Supergirl Season 3, Episode 2, Triggers. This episode I was actually looking forward to, mostly because of the villain coming into play and the way that she was going to basically, mess with Kara as a character and her power was definitely cool. The way they showed it with people cowering in fear, I actually really enjoyed. In some ways they did kind of like the Batman thing, because that's what I was hoping it wasn't going to be, where it's like, oh man, I hope it's not just everybody screaming, because it's like, that's the toxin and stuff from Scarecrow with Batman. It's like that's how people always are. They're always like freaking out. And in this, it was more like a cowering fear. Like people, like when she walks through like the second bank that she robbed in the episode, it's the first one we see, and she walks through. People just look at her and like they're looking at her like the woman who actually hit the silent alarm. The way they did the shots for that, I loved, because she was looking at her in terror, and you could see like there were tears coming down her eyes, and she wasn't like freaking out or screaming. She was just like in absolute horror, and she was like almost frozen in place. And the guy who like he literally gets down on the ground and like balls up. I was like, I like the way that looks. It's not just this is super scary and stuff like that. And they had that a little bit where she basically was just like bees, and then the guys at the end just freaked out because it was bees. But for the most part, when people would freak out, it would just shut them down. They wouldn't like be screaming and running in terror from stuff. It was like they aren't just seeing stuff outside of like, let's say, the bee thing, but it was like they were transported to that actual moment. Like when she did it on Kara, that's when I realized, I was like, oh, this isn't like they see hallucinations and they're freaking out, so they they cower. It was like they're in that actual like worst memory, and sometimes it's probably even amplified to some of the worst things that have ever happened to them. And I love the way that played out. Like her, the very first time when they were like in the bank vault, and she's just stuck. It's like it was almost like a little bit of vertigo, and she's just like stuck against the wall, and she's just looking around because she's in that actual moment, and she's kind of just trapped there. And I love the way that looked visually with the characters, like I said, kind of just cowering in fear. It wasn't like the bombastic freakouts of like the Scarecrow toxin from Batman. So I was happy to see that they kind of did it in a different way, because I'm so used to that. Especially Gotham recently did it like a few episodes ago, so I was like, I really hope that they do it in a bit of a different way, and they definitely did. Like the way people reacted was so different. They would kind of just stop, and it was like, this is so horrifying. I can't actually react in the worst way possible. They basically would just either ball up, or they would just be frozen there like crying, or they would like kind of fall over like Kara did. But I love the way that worked. Like the way they utilized that woman's powers, I thought was really well done. And, excuse me, and we see, I think it was the second time when Kara went to her, even though she said like she won't catch me off guard, I'm prepared this time, she just went right in. She's done that. They've done that before in the show, where it's like they caught me off guard the first time, and she literally goes in with zero difference the second time. Like I know what it's gonna be. Somehow that means I'm gonna beat it, and of course she gets caught the second time too. So when she goes to her in the parking lot, which is where we find out that this woman can't just permit fear on people. She is actually psychic. Like she's able to actually read minds and stuff. And when she deals with her there, we see that this sort of wave is actually concussive. Like it is an actual physical force, and it's not just like mental representation where people are like literally thrown back because of that fear just like hits them. It's an actual physical force of air. Like she blows out the window in the truck, and I was like, oh, that's actually cool. It makes it kind of 2 times as deadly, depending on how powerful it can actually be. But it could knock someone back. If you can blow a window out, any normal person would have been knocked down by that. So I was like, okay, that's definitely like a huge concussive gust that doesn't really come into play, but if they decide to bring the character back, it just adds another layer to what that ability can do outside of the fear aspect. But I thought that was a great scene, because of course she gets busted again, but we also see John try to, he tries to help her out, and of course he can't, because they like super nerf Martian Manhunter, because he'd be able to like totally stop that woman in like 2.5 seconds if he wanted to. If this was comics, that this whole episode would have been done. But the way he is in this show, he can't exactly do everything all at one time, and he's not able to help Kara as much as he wants to help her. So he gets pushed out, and then the woman's like, it's just you and me again. And Kara gets knocked out, and then the woman just kind of takes off. And this kind of coincides with the actual stuff she's dealing with. They have her, the beginning of this episode I really enjoyed, because it was like 3 different sets of people. It's Kara waking up, Alex and Maggie, and then I wish I could remember the actual character's name. All I can think of is her villain name, Rain, but I remember her daughter's name is Ruby. And it shows these 3 sets of people kind of waking up and stuff, and I like that. I thought it was a cool way to do it. And it may have just been, and for a second, I could have sworn they showed Alex and Maggie for like 1 shot, but maybe it was just Rain from like a different perspective or something, but I could have sworn like Alex and Maggie were in there. So maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But I know for sure they were cutting back and forth between Kara and Rain, and it was to kind of show, these two sides of the coin, whoever, whatever they decide to explain for her character, and ultimately how that's going to play out. Because I'm still super curious, like, what is it that's going to just be like, villain? Because at this point, she is a single mother trying to take care of her daughter, who just so happens to have super strength, and I don't think she knows about it. I am curious, though. I was wondering about it in this episode. I was like, I assume that she never knew about her power, and maybe she doesn't, but at the same time, this could be one of those situations where if she utilizes her power, they could be doing kind of like a Flash, sort of Caitlyn thing, where if she uses her powers more, it'll make her lose her mind, and that's what's going to make her a villain. And maybe if she keeps having to, randomly save her daughter, because that's what her daughter was trying to do, the next time she has to like use her power, she might not be able to control herself. So maybe that's what it is, and she does know that she has these powers, and she hides them because she could lose control and kill people, including her daughter. But it just made me wonder. I was thinking about it this episode. I was like, does she know? Like, she knows what happened, and she does the adrenaline thing and stuff like that. But then I was like, if that happened to me, even though that is an actual thing, there are all those crazy cases with, the adrenaline. The famous story that always comes up is like this older woman who like lifted a car a little bit. So those are actual cases, that adrenaline, like that fight or flight moment, and you just go into like overdrive. But if I was, I like just bent some bars and be like, I think I'm gonna test this out. I'm gonna have to figure something. I'm not just gonna be like, no big deal. I don't have powers. It was just an adrenaline moment. I'm gonna try to see if that's true or not. I'm gonna see what I can't do. So it just makes me wonder how far into things is she really looking, because at this point she was kind of just denying it the whole episode for her daughter's sake. But it does make me wonder if she's curious herself, because it just makes sense. So maybe she knows, maybe she doesn't, but that question definitely came up in my mind while watching. I was like, she's denying it a lot, but she's not even going the route of denying it and also saying like, I thought it was crazy too. Like, she just gives a bunch of explanations to her daughter, and then that's it. She doesn't say like, I thought it was crazy, and I've been thinking about it. It's just like, nope, not a thing. No, she almost acts like it never even happened, and she tries to like move past it. So that's part of where my suspicion comes from, as far as her knowing she has it and just trying to hide it, and why she would try to do that. But they did a decent story with her. The daughter was just trying to ultimately spend more time with the mom, because it was like, if you have superpowers, that can be your job, which I thought was kind of a funny thing for her to say. It was like, if you're a superhero, that is your job, like that's where all the money comes from now. But I thought that was funny. At the end, it was just like her daughter's thought process on that was like, if you're a hero, that's all you have to do to make money and stuff. So, which some people do that, boost your gold. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, the way that like her daughter's mind was working in that concept. But going throughout the episode, I thought it was pretty cool. They didn't, of course, they teased it again at the end when her daughter happens to end up in the final fight sequence, and the ball, the wrecking ball, of course, it snaps and it's about to drop on them. And I'm like, okay, so we're gonna get this sort of public display moment where she has the super strength, and maybe the thing falls on her and it's like just shatters into pieces, or like cracks in half or something, because she's able to do it. But of course, Kara comes in as Supergirl, and she whisks the thing away, and it's like, okay, so they're saving it. It's not going to be a public display sort of thing. She will eventually develop these powers, or eventually lose control maybe of these powers, whatever they decide to end up doing with it. But I thought it was cool. Either way, I liked the way they kind of did the story. It's very simple, but like I said, it brought up that question for me personally. I don't know if it did for you guys, but for me it was like, the way she's kind of just giving explanations and then just moving past it, not even talking about her own feelings towards it or anything like that, just made me a little suspicious. Because I'm like, anyone else would be like, even if they really thought that, you would still be like, it was crazy. And I do think about it a lot, but the way she was kind of avoiding it just felt like she knew what she did, and she just was like, well, I can't go into that part of myself because I'll just lose control and become a crazy villain, which she will anyway. So, made me curious, but I like that moment, and once again, I'm still curious how it's going to play out. The fact that she had like the whole dream sequence stuff with Kara before, that still hasn't come up again. It was just like a crazy little moment, so no explanation for how that played out, how she was somehow in the mind of Kara. Like Kara's dream sequence during that one moment at the end of, I think it was the premiere, or maybe it was last week's episode, I already forgot. But yeah, it's like, alright, well, not too much there, but, or I guess that was last week's episode, this is the second one I'm thinking. So yeah, I don't know exactly what the explanation for that is just yet, but I'm still curious there, and I thought it was still a decent story. One thing that certainly came up from their story that I didn't think was going to really have like any true relevance was actually Alex and Maggie. early on in the episode, they're having an argument about the DJ versus the band thing, which is hilarious because they had John step in and he's like talking about how, music needs to be perfect. If you don't hear it exactly like you want it, you can't get like jiggy on the dance floor. So that was really silly. But at the end, when Alex meets Rain and Ruby again, it's like, I met you, and she talks about how rubies are some of the toughest material, only diamonds are stronger. She's like, oh, she's smart and strong, it's a deadly combo. When she goes back to Maggie, she's like, I didn't know you were so good with kids. She's like, well, it'll be a blessing when we have kids. And they go through this moment where Maggie's like, oh, I never really saw myself as a mom. And Alex was like, no big deal. That's something we should talk about. And I was like, relationships are made and like destroyed on something as big as whether or not you want to have children. And I really, really hope that they don't end up doing that. Like, these are supposed to be characters that get married, and I do not want to see them do that where we have a relationship. That's actually one of the best parts of the show. Honestly, Alex and Maggie, I love them as a duo in this show. And the way their relationship built up, I thought was well done. They had that one moment where it seemed like it was falling apart, and I was like, why did they do that? And they ultimately fixed it, so it was fine. And I just hope it works, because I'm like, that's a real serious thing to just be like, oh, I didn't know that, which you should definitely know that before you get married anyway. But that's a topic for other TV shows, I guess, because they always do that sort of thing where people ask a random question a million years too late. It's like, that would have been like question number 2. But they're getting married, and they just now started to talk about kids. And it's like, yeah, it's something we should talk about. And I'm like, I feel like they're kind of leaning towards this might not work out, because clearly Alex wants kids, Maggie does not. That was just set up right in that moment. One does, one does not. And it's like, I don't really know if they're going to make it through that. I hope they do, because that would really suck if they did. It seems like such a stupid thing to do it on. Like I said, it's one of the things where it's like, it's been months. They chose to get engaged and married, and they're figuring all this stuff out. And suddenly now the kid thing came up. So not only would it be dumb because they broke up, it would be dumb because that would just be dumb writing. Because it's like, of all the things that could have broken them up, it was something that they should have definitely talked about months ago, and it just makes it like crappy writing and a crappy situation. So I really hope that that doesn't happen, because it would just be 2 crappy things at once. So I'm really hoping that works out. But as soon as that came up, I was like, that is so much more important than the band thing. Like, that's an argument. That could be the end of something. So I hope that doesn't happen, because I love Alex and Maggie together. And they already had an emotional moment again in this episode between Kara and Alex, and I don't need them to do another one where it's because Alex is going through a horrible situation, and then Alex and Kara are both depressed because they lost somebody. So I was like, we don't need that. I hope that doesn't happen, and just be like a bunch of bad, sad stuff at one time, and also the bad writing part. I really hope that doesn't happen, but certainly made me worried. As soon as it came up, I was like, that's a big deal. Shrug it off now, but that's going to be like a main story in one of these seasons, or one of these episodes for this season. And I hope ultimately it comes to some epic, perfect, magical resolution where they end up staying together. So we'll see how it ultimately ends up playing out. But I really wanted to mention that because I was like, they threw that in there at the very end of the episode, and it's like, that could have just not been there. Everything would have been cool. Argue about the band or DJ, no big deal. But it was like, that's going to be there. So I wanted to definitely make sure I mentioned that before, heading on to the other stories. Particularly Lena and Jimmy and like their whole thing. And of course, Carl was definitely involved in that, and it was kind of fun watching that. Even though it's the CW drama element, it still actually worked. And when it came down to it, it was Kara dealing with a lot of crappy stuff all at one time. It's like her not being able to stop this villain, her facing these fears of the moment when she saw her planet destroyed, and then at the very end when she has that moment with Alex, it's her officially facing the concept that Mon-El could actually be dead and that she's the one that did it to him. So very well done with the way they handled that, and her going through these issues, but she also had to deal with said issues as Supergirl and as Kara because she was working with Lena. And when she comes in and it's like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do that, and Lena's she's much closer than she was before. It's like, oh, I have to, we're friends, but now I'm your boss, and you just disappear all the time. We need to figure this out. And she was trying to help her. It's like, I know it's about Mon-El and stuff like that, and she tried to avoid it, and that's when they had that little argument. But of course, everything kind of works its way around in the end. And the same kind of goes for Jimmy, where Lena was kind of pushing him out a little bit. I was kind of on his side, because it was like, it's one thing to be like, okay, she comes in, bit of a surprise for him that she's going to be there, every day now. But to not have him like at the meetings and stuff like that, it's like, oh, that it seems like she's trying to like kind of just push him out of the whole situation. And so he steps up and is like, hey, I don't want to be your chaperone, but I am a part of this company. I ran it for a little while, so I am here. I am valuable and I am an asset to this company. And ultimately things kind of work out, but it was just a funny moment, especially even when they, everything was solved. He's like, okay, I have a meeting in 20 minutes, you be there. And he's like, I'll see you in 19. She's like, 20's fine. And the way he looked at the end was just kind of funny, but that ultimately just ended up being like a small little thing, but there are just a lot of little pieces in there. I was like, okay, I like how this is working out, and just the little hints of what could happen in the future, specifically between Lena and Kara with the whole, I gotta go here and I gotta do this stuff all at random, especially with her being put on the general alert thing, which might end up changing up now that she's actually faced that fear that was a part of it. It was like her having every opportunity to avoid thinking about Manel. So maybe now that she's faced that weight that she's had on her, maybe she, won't be stepping out as often as she was in this episode. But I actually enjoyed it. This season so far has definitely been pretty good. Of course, looking forward to what in the world is going to happen with Rain and how she becomes this big bad villain. What's going to be happening with Lena. We definitely didn't get any sights or clues or anything like that to the dude. I totally can't remember his name because I'm terrible with names. But our other, main villain who basically replaced Maxwell Lord wherever he is now. Whatever's happened with him. So we didn't get it really, anything out of his character, but I'm definitely looking forward to what they have, coming next for this season, because I'm liking what we got so far and the way they're kind of building up the main villain as this normal character who will eventually, like, kind of fall from grace. I actually like that sort of story, especially when it's a character that may or may not know her past, and that's kind of the big thing. We really don't know exactly what's going on there, so I kind of like that little mystery to it. Like, does she know her powers? Does she not? Is she avoiding it? That sort of thing actually has me excited because we know she's going to be a villain at some point. It's just a matter of how, and the connections to her possibly mentally with Kara. Like I said, the dream thing was like a huge mystery. Still not even a clue to that. Like nothing, no hints or anything. So looking forward to a lot of answers for this season. And just in general, so far the episodes have been pretty good. So excited for this season. I think it's definitely just gotten better. I think the show has definitely gotten better over time. And this season seems like it's kicking off really well too. So looking forward to where we're headed, but of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below, let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it, and I would love to know your theories on Rain, whether you know her character or not. I mentioned from our premiere review, like, as soon as, things kind of went down, I went straight to a video just to learn about the character, and it's going to be very different, I have to imagine, from the comics. Even though she'll ultimately be a villain, it's very different from her actual origin, or at least the origin I saw, from the comic book, so it'll be interesting. Like I said, the mystery was brought up in my mind as to whether or not she really did know what was going on with her powers and she stays away from it because of the mental element, or she just doesn't know. So it's hard to say, and I don't know the actual full story in the comics, so I don't have any theories based off of what happened there, but I would love to know your theories if you guys have any, as to what you think will happen with her character, how she's going to become evil, all that stuff. I would love to know, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Definitely let me know what you guys thought about this episode in general, and please, just definitely let me know what you guys think about the theories and stuff, because that, I think, is going to be one of the biggest elements, is like that mystery. So I definitely want to know your theories on that, and like I said, what you thought about the episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.